the string sitting on the rainbow. I got the string around my finger. Lucky me. Can't you see?
Good morning, good afternoon, Staten Island, and welcome to the Lambert Show, filmed right here in downtown Mariners Harbor, where I grew up and was raised, right off South Avenue. Great location, great facility, great people working here, dedicated. I dedicate every show to my mom and dad, Dom and Jane Lambert, who lived here, of course, in the neighborhood, and my dad was one of the earliest TV stars, for want of a better word. He had the Dom Lambert Show here in the 80s, and he was Johnny Carson, and I was Ed McMahon. So I always have to mention that. And I've had so many different guests here, and I got two great guests here today. My first guest sitting on my left is Edwina Martin, and I have to call you Winnie. Can I do that?
Please do.
Okay.
Please do.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for having me on your show today.
You're very
appreciate
well.
it.
I have a few questions that I have written down here.
Sure.
But before we get to that, so are you always on Staten Island? Are you born on Staten Island?
No, I grew up in the Maryland, D.C. area.
No kidding.
And spent my junior high school years in the Rocky Mountains in Fort Collins, Colorado,
Oh,
actually.
my God. What a beautiful way
I
to
went to
go.
college in Western Massachusetts, and then I made my way to New York City.
My God, that's terrific. My son lives in Washington.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
In D.C. proper or in the Maryland suburbs?
Well, he lived in D.C. proper. Well, he lived in Georgetown.
Yep.
But he just moved to right over the Arlington Bridge.
Okay, so he's in Virginia now.
Yeah, now he's
Okay.
right there. And he has an apartment in New York. He's living La Vida Loca.
Well, good for him.
Good for him. And then he went to school up in Massachusetts. So you got a couple of tracks there that you're on. So how did you wind up in the Rocky Mountains? That's like really amazing. You've just family moved there?
So actually, it's an interesting story. My mother grew up in West Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
My father grew up in Pittsburgh, but his parents moved to the D.C. area when he was very little.
Mm-hmm.
He was a government worker after he graduated from college.
Mm-hmm.
He worked for the Department of Agriculture. And you may hear me cough from time to time. I'm asthmatic.
Yeah.
And because of the mild winter, my allergies have been really crazy.
Same trouble.
So when I was little, my asthma was very bad.
Mm-hmm.
And the doctor said that if I could live someplace a few years where the air was dry, it would really help with my recovery. And the Department of Agriculture had an office in Fort Collins, Colorado. So actually my family was sort of uprooted and moved away from, the rest of the family for me to get better. And we were there for close to 3 years.
Wow. Great experience. I have the similar problem. And I got it after 9/11. I don't think it was related, but that was the timing. Mm-hmm. And I had never had asthma in my life. And then all of a sudden I got it, and same thing when it gets warm in the winter when it shouldn't be warm.
Yep.
Okay, for
it
some
really
reason
goes haywire.
It goes haywire.
Yeah.
And this has been a tough winter for me.
Yeah.
Jesus.
It's been a very, very tough winter. Very tough for people with allergies and people with any upper respiratory ailments.
Right. Do that. No, I'm going to go ask a couple of questions. How's that?
That's fine.
I got to put my glasses on.
Ask away.
So what does a public administrator do?
So every county in New York State and certainly every county in New York City has an Office of the Public Administrator or something with a similar name. And we were created under the New York State Surrogates Court Act. In New York City, I'm actually a non-mayoral commissioner. So I'm a city commissioner as well as public administrator. But I am appointed not by the mayor, but by the surrogate court judge. And the reason that we do that is that surrogate court obviously deals with estates and trusts, et cetera. And what the public administrator's office does is we oversee and take care of the estates of persons who die without family and without a will or any sort of future planning document to let people know what they want done with their property and with them when they pass.
Gotcha. How does money fit into this? In other words, if they're broke, do you guys have the ability to help them
So that's a good question. We're not a burial fund,
Right.
so someone can't come to us if they don't have whatever the amount of money that they need for a funeral. And we do not perform funerals, but on Staten Island, we have a very unique tradition, and we're unique amongst perhaps all of the public administrators throughout New York State, certainly in New York City. If we have an indigent decedent that we are appointed or become the administrator of that estate, we bury them on Staten Island. So we do not send them. Do you know what Pauper's Field is? Or just for the people who are listening, the Pauper's Field in New York City is called Hart Island. And it is an island which is actually sort of sinking right now from the volume of people who have been buried there.
My God, I didn't know
New
that.
York City
I
right
heard
now.
something about
Yeah.
it, but not.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt.
New York
I want-
City is engaging in a process to rethink how they deal with these types of burials for that reason, because there are a limited number of years left where people can be sent there. I'm happy to say that beginning with one of my predecessors, John Carney, whose nephew is now an assembly member, Mike Cusick, as a matter of fact. He started a program where he raised money to bury indigent Staten Islanders.
Wow.
And we can't use city money. The city money that's in our budget, because we are a city agency, cannot be used for that.
Right.
And so we get money from elected officials and donations from generous individuals to help fund this program.
It's amazing.
This past fiscal year, we were funded for this program by Councilwoman Debbie Rose,
I love
who's
Debbie
given
Rose.
money towards this effort from the first year that she was elected going forward. So she's been supporting it for a number of years.
Great.
Last year, I asked Assembly Member Mike Cusick, calling on the memory of his uncle, if he could help fund our burial program. This year, I asked all of our elected officials, and we'll see who supports this.
Who can help you?
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you're mentioning it to get the word out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
How can people contribute, or is there a way that they can do that?
Yeah, so my predecessor, Anthony Catalano, worked with the World of Women, which is a nonprofit on Staten Island.
I know Pat Capodanno. She started it.
They do wonderful
She's my
advocacy
buddy.
to help women and girls in
Yes,
Staten Island.
amazing.
And working with them, they created a Friends of not-for-profit called the Foundation for Dignity. And in fact, we work very closely with the Foundation for Dignity. They send volunteers, at least 6 volunteers, to almost every burial that I have presided over since
the
I
World of Women?
became. Yes, well, from the Foundation for Dignity,
right,
just
I gotcha.
to get that name right.
Okay,
Yeah,
Foundation for
yeah,
Dignity.
yeah.
Okay.
If they come, usually there's not a lot of advance notice, so we give them. Because we have to work with the cemeteries.
Sure.
Our cemeteries and funeral homes on Staten Island are also incredibly generous. We couldn't do it without their generosity.
I know most of them, and they are just terrific.
But if people want to give towards this program, then they can look for the Facebook page for the Foundation for Dignity,
Okay.
and they can give to them.
That's great. I'm glad that we talked about that.
Yes,
we got
yes.
the word out there. So important.
Absolutely.
May I go on to the
absolutely.
next question?
Sure. I just want
Okay.
to say just
Sure.
one more thing about the burials,
Sure.
because there's every burial we do is special. I thought this would be the most difficult part of my job. It actually isn't, and you can ask me what I think is later on.
Okay.
But I have found it the most beautiful and the most life-affirming. I think because of the volunteers, because of the openness and generosity of Staten Islanders, you are seeing people, when I do this work, at their very best. And they're helping people who were friendless for whatever reason, for whatever happened in their life
Right.
that led them to the point where they didn't have family or friends to bid them farewell.
Right.
We come together
Beautiful.
so that they don't leave alone. And it's absolutely beautiful.
Heartwarming, yeah.
And a particularly special aspect is when we bury the stillborns. We work with Richmond University Medical Center, and we actually are in talks right now with Staten Island University Hospital to bury the stillborn children.
Jeez, my God.
I had my first several weeks ago, and we buried 7 stillborns,
My
6
God.
little coffins.
Never thinking
That was very hard.
Sure,
That was very
had to be
difficult.
very hard. Never thinking that your job would actually be that would be part of your job in public administrator. Got that right. But I just wouldn't see that as a natural thing, and here it is. It's a big part of it.
Yeah.
And it is great when you see people step up. People are always nice in a snowstorm. They'll shovel you, and the same guy the next day he'll get mad at you for going through the stop sign. How people react just drives me crazy.
Yeah,
But,
and death is a strange thing.
Yeah.
So you also in working on these estates, one of the things that we do is we marshal the assets of an estate when either we take control of it. If it's under 50,000, then we have the authority under the Surrogates Court Act to start working on that estate and marshaling the assets. If it's over 50,000, then we have to have letters issued, letters of administration by the surrogate court judge. And as we marshal the assets, we do research to see if we can find family, because sometimes people become estranged.
Right.
There could be children,
Right.
there could be siblings, there could be parents, aunts and uncles.
Right.
So we look at who is eligible to inherit under New York state law, and we start doing research for that. And sometimes we work with genealogists, and sometimes people receive money that they weren't expecting, somewhere along the road when we finished with an estate, and we do our final accounting and the money goes out. And sometimes people show up and say that they
I'm related to
are
Frank
related.
Sinatra. Yeah. I need
And
my million.
our job is to protect the estate, to protect the assets, to guard against fraud, to guard against waste. But we don't have an interest, quote unquote. If there's a family member that comes forward, their job is to prove
Who they are.
that they are, and then they can petition for letters to be appointed the administrator.
You have, of course, a staff. Is it suit?
I have an amazing staff.
Yeah. So how many do you have roughly? Because it's a lot of work here.
Oh, sure. Well,
Yeah.
we're a city agency, and we are actually the smallest city agency in New York City,
Wow.
with 5 full-time staff and 1 part-time staff
Okay.
person.
So not that small. You got people working.
5, including me.
5 including you. You got people working.
Including me. When we get a new estate, one of the first things we have to do, related to, I talked about doing the research for family and
Right.
marshaling the assets, we do an initial walkthrough of the estate. And I've gone on, I'm going to say 95%. Sometimes I'm out of town, or I might have a hearing or something and
Right,
can't
where you
make
can't
it.
be there, yeah.
But I'm on most of our walkthroughs. And that is actually the most difficult part of the
I was
job.
just going to. I was going to ask the question, but you.
Yeah.
That's the hard one. Huh?
That's really difficult.
Yeah.
Sometimes the real property, if they live in a house or an apartment, sometimes it's fine, and you go in and you start sort of looking for the clues and researching. But oftentimes you also see the isolation that so many people are living in. You see the deleterious of life, so to speak. There are a lot of hoarders.
Yeah.
There are people who haven't left their homes for years because they can order their food online, and they, don't have to interact with other human beings.
I can't believe what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
That this is part of what you do. You have to be dedicated to do this. You do. You have to be dedicated. With that smile, I know you are.
We do the best that we can.
Yeah, that's the bottom line. Well, you mentioned Debbie Rose, and I always give a shout out to Debbie, because her and my dad were very good friends. They worked on the community board together.
She was on it for 28 years.
And so was my dad. So they were together all the time, and all the two of them together were great. And then when my dad got sick, she had someone in Clove Lake too. and my dad was in Clove Lake, So Debbie would always stop in and see us, and and it was just an amazing time for the both of us because we both had a family there, because that's a difficult thing to do. But love Debbie.
She is one of the first people that I met when I moved to Staten Island.
No kidding.
Yeah. When I moved to Staten Island, I was working at Legal Services NYC in their central office. And LSNYC, as we call it for short, is the largest provider of free civil legal services to low-income people in the United States. And one of the first jobs that I had there was opening up Staten Island Legal Services, which has now been open for a number of years and has provided services to needy Staten Islanders for many, many years, to thousands of Staten Islanders, I'm happy to say.
That's wonderful.
But in the process of opening that office, I did a needs assessment, and I and the team of people that were working on this project met with every judge, almost every nonprofit, all the community leaders on Staten Island. And Staten Island is small enough that you can do that.
Yeah.
In Brooklyn, that would take like 5 years probably, but there's 2 million people there.
Right.
And so I met her during that needs assessment, and we became instant friends.
Well, I could see. The personality.
I ended up working for her, and I was her Deputy Chief of Staff and Counsel and Legislative and Budget Director. I was with her for 7 years, and it was 7 glorious years.
Yes.
And your story, I think, really epitomizes what's so special about her.
Yeah.
She's a genuine person.
Yeah, she is.
She's very real.
She is.
She tries her best.
Yep. That's the bottom line.
She thinks of everyone else first and herself last.
Isn't that a wonder? That's the way to be.
If only the whole world can be like that. Yeah.
There you go. I have a nephew. Oh, he's not my nephew yet. He will be in June. He's been dating my niece on my wife's side for about 5 years. He does private estates. And
maybe I've seen him in surrogate court.
He could be.
I'm there every Wednesday.
He's actually from Jersey, but he does do work on Staten Island too.
And we have some estates in New Jersey.
In Jersey,
yeah.
Okay. And he's a great young man and very, very smart. And his dad has a PhD. He's an educator. And anyway, he's helped me out with some of the family. He's a really good kid, but he also collects cars on his own, having nothing to do really with his estate business. And he has 62 old Cadillacs.
Oh, my. Where does he keep them all?
And his mother's house is his house, and and then he ran out of space, and they would rent garages. Then him and his father built a big building, bought a big building in Jersey, and they have all these older Cadillacs in this building. I mean, they're like 57s, 62s. I mean, really amazing. The old Cadillacs with the fins. Anyway, so he's a collector. So I guess it goes together, the estates collecting,
a fascination.
Fascination. Let me see what I got written here. Not that we have to do. I love when you just keep going on and on and on.
Well, I have a question for you, actually.
Okay, go ahead.
Because we're talking about my former boss, Debbie Rose.
Right.
And I've been public administrator for a year and a quarter now.
Right.
I started January 1st last year, 2019.
I was there.
And you sang at my swearing in at Snook Harbor.
Yes, I did.
It was wonderful. And you sang a couple of, I think, very special songs, right?
Yes, they were very important to me.
Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, a little bit. It's a couple of things, especially right now on Staten Island. It's very timely. I dedicated those 2 songs that day to Father Vincent Capodanno, who is my cousin, who was from Mariners Harbor, Elm Park.
Who has a big boulevard named after him.
Has a big boulevard, and a lot of people never knew more than that he had a boulevard named after him. And he has the Medal of Honor got killed in Vietnam heroically, amazingly heroically. 3 movies already made about him. I had the privilege to be in the last 2. As one of the 3 or 4 narrators, and in particular about his time on Staten Island. Mm-hmm. So when I found out that in order to become a saint, you have to raise money, I was a little taken back. I'm Catholic.
So sainthood costs.
Yeah, sainthood. Nothing is free.
Who knew?
Everything's free in America. So it's not free in the Vatican. So I realized, and there is the cause for the canonization of Father Vincent Capodanno, located in D.C. The National Cathedral is a Protestant church in D.C. that is the seat of the Protestants, and then the Church of the Immaculate Conception would be the equivalent in Catholicism for the National Cathedral. It is a huge church, like St. Patrick's Cathedral size, and there's a special room there for Father Vincent, and with many things dedicated to him, and that's where the cause for the canonization is. So when I recorded the CD, I recorded it to raise money for that cause, for the canonization, and anyone listening wants to donate, you can. It's very timely because St. Adalbert's and Holy Rosary are merging, and it will be called the Father Vincent Capodanno Academy. I know there are a lot of logistics, so I actually am going to sing a couple of songs, if you don't mind, in the middle of this conversation.
I would love that.
Okay, so I'll just take a little break, and I'll sing a couple of songs from that CD in honor of Father Vincent and what's going on. The first miracle ever to be attributed to him was just verified 4 months ago. Now we're waiting for the Catholic Church to consider it a move for beatification. So I'm going to sing these two songs. Okay? Okay.
This is the first song on the CD that I recorded to raise awareness for Father Capodanno's eventual sainthood. Climb every mountain, search high and low, follow every rainbow, every path you know. Climb every mountain, ford every stream, follow every byway, till you find your dream. A dream that will need all the love you can give. Every day of your life, for as long as you live. Climb every mountain, ford every stream, follow every rainbow, till you find your dream. This song is the last song on the CD, and perhaps to me, one of the most meaningful songs and prayers ever written. It's the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done in earth as it is in heaven. Give our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever.
God bless Father Vincent Capodanno.
I hope you enjoyed those two songs.
Oh, I did. I did. And
I enjoyed singing that.
It brought me back to my swearing in, which was such an amazing day. I served wine that I made myself at the Staten Island Winery, which is now merging with Vino
Well,
Divino.
he's my cousin, Bobby.
Oh, really?
Bobby's my cousin. My wife Lenore is cousins with Bobby Randall.
Oh, how funny! So they're merging
Yes,
with Vino
Divino.
Yeah. So I make wine almost every year.
Oh,
so,
I didn't know that. We
so
did
now
too.
I'll be making it at Vino
We make it
Divino.
at Vino Divino. He's a nice fella too.
And this opportunity to be public administrator.
That was a great day. You had a
came
audience.
from our new surrogate, Matt Titone.
Yeah, I know Matt since he's a young man.
I'm
Terrific guy.
very grateful for that because it's been an amazing, life-changing
Ride
experience.
for you. Yeah. Well, his dad. I'm in the car business. Going to be about 56 years.
Wow.
And I'm too old to be sitting here. I'm 20 years past my shelf life. But his dad got so many cars from me. And I think he bought Matt's first 2 cars from me. But he was such a good wheeler and dealer, I think I gave him money to take the car. But I loved him. He was a good guy, Vito, So I know Matt for many years, and I was so happy when it all worked for him in that direction. Guy deserves it, I love Staten Island. The Staten Island, like you said, it's different. It's just a different place. It's city of New York, but it's different.
I was very nervous to move here at first because before I met my partner, Mickey, I hadn't spent a lot of time here, so it was something new. It was an unknown.
Right.
And I remember the first walk that we took after we moved into our condo. And Mickey wanted to show me all the things because I had said to him, it's really important for certain things to be within walking distance of me. I need a gym within walking distance, I need a store within walking distance.
I need a pasta station. No, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
So, we were walking around and he's showing me all the things in walking distance. And we came up to this man with this beautiful collie. And the collie ran up to me and it's wagging its tail and so friendly. And the man said, he loves you and he doesn't like anybody. Pet him. And it's such a little moment, but that was the moment when I knew I had made the right decision.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah, it's the little things in life.
That's how it kind of works.
I was going, and not long, a few months after I'd lived here, I became very involved with. I'm very involved with many organizations, as you know, in Staten Island.
Right.
One of the first that I got involved with is the American Association of University Women. And along with a few other members, we started a crafting group, and we would meet once a month. And I would bring my crocheting, and someone else would have her knitting, and another person brought her tatting.
Right.
And we would craft and chat, and then we would eat.
You should have ate that crafted chat.
Yeah, then you would have some very interesting results, I'm sure. But I'll never forget it. So a few months after I'd lived here, I was taking an express bus to the Staten Island Mall, which is where the person lived whose house we were meeting at for
Right.
that night's meeting. And I wasn't totally sure, so I told the driver when I got on, I want to get off at blah, blah, blah. And he said, okay, good, I'll let you know. And it happened to be near where a woman had been attacked a week beforehand. So when we got to the stop, the driver said, so someone's picking you up, right? And everyone on the bus was like, oh, you can't get off by yourself. Al, wait for her. I think the driver's name was Al.
Yeah, right.
Wait for her ride. Someone was attacked. They were all,
Right.
they didn't know me.
They didn't know you.
They were all worried about me and my
amazing?
safety. And my friend was sitting there waiting because she was worried about
the
the
same
attack
thing.
that had happened.
Right.
Well, but anyway, once
Yeah.
again,
Staten
just
Island is an amazing
a
place.
moment, where you're in the right place.
Well, I very rarely, and I refuse to talk politics. I don't really like it because it just, right now especially, it separates people. And I don't judge people by their politics. I judge people by their heart and their soul. I see it very differently. But I always feel that, have felt over the years that Staten Island, when we used to vote years ago on Staten Island, everybody voted. If you were a Republican or a Democrat, in many cases, you didn't even care. If you knew Matt Titone and you were a Democrat and he was a Republican, or vice versa, you liked him, you just voted for him. We were so tight on this island for many years that whether you were a Democrat or Republican, it wasn't the issue. It was what you could do for Staten Island were you elected. That was really probably about 70% of the decision making, which is so wonderful because that's really what I'm saying. You're voting for the person and how we know that they could vote a particular way in a particular thing, and maybe your philosophy wouldn't be advanced, but that wasn't always the case. It was a good place, and still is a good place. I love it. I only have a minute and a half, but I want to ask you before I'm stopping that conversation. Is anything else you want to say in a minute and 41 seconds that you'd like to just get across?
Let's see.
I only got the one question.
I know.
And I'm happy.
I know.
That means we got room for another show.
Well, I already said to your listeners, look for the Foundation for Dignity to
Yes,
make
it's important.
donations.
Right.
If you want to find us online, we do have a website.
Okay.
It's nyc.gov/RCPA, which stands for Richmond County Public Administrator.
Okay.
And-
Are you the administrator? Does it?
we serve at the pleasure of the surrogate.
Oh,
So,
okay. So there's nothing definite about it.
The,
Okay.
the surrogate could wake up and, decide that he wants to appoint
right.
someone else. But his term is, I think, 14 years.
Oh, so that's great. That's all cool. Well, I want to thank you. You absolutely great guest. You're a very delightful person.
Oh,
And
thank you.
Yeah, you are.
Well,
I knew
this
that
has
right
been
away.
a pleasure. It's been an absolute pleasure. And as you can
Me too.
see,
Me too.
I brought notes and other things
know,
because
but
I didn't know what you were going to ask me.
But and I had stuff here that and I'm glad we didn't get to it. This is cool.
The other thing I'll say
Go
is
ahead.
future plan to protect your family so that things are done the way you want them to do. Have a will, do a trust. It is worth the time and effort. Future plan.
Okay, I'll take that
Yeah.
to heart. So my next guest really needs no introduction. He is a legend on Staten Island. And I know John had a couple of health issues, but he looks like $1 million right now. And I'm very glad that that's true. And his name is John Sollazzo. Hey, John. They
Like
call
a
him
brother.
Mr. Democrat.
That's right.
Mr.
Right.
Democrat. And I'm not a political guy. I say it all the time.
Ralph Lamberti told me, he says, you'll never lose that
You
name.
can't lose that name.
It's true.
You can't lose that name. Anyway, so we were talking a few minutes before we came on, and our families go back. I'm going to just date this. I think my grandmother moved into your grandmother's house in the early 30s because she came after her husband passed away, and she moved to two different houses, one in Simonson and Walker Street, and then another one near Simonson and Walker. And then the apartment became available in your grandmother's house.
Right.
So I'm going to date that to 1928, 1931. That's probably when my grandmother wound up, in your grandmother's house.
Yeah.
So that's 70, it's 90 years ago.
Well, Grandpa built that house.
I know, you were
And
telling me.
everybody in
152 Simonson.
Everybody in Manners Harbor was related.
It was amazing.
Because in Italy, they all came from the same town.
Right.
So they related to everybody.
Right. It was amazing. And, Staten Island people still feel that way. When you go away and you say you're from Staten Island, somebody goes, wait a minute, you feel like you're related to these people.
Absolutely.
We had and still do, have an amazing thing on Staten Island, quite different than the other boroughs, I don't know, that's how I feel anyway.
Well, you can't go anywhere, and you go to dinner or you go on vacation, and there's a guy
that you grew up
from
with.
Staten Island.
I know.
So you really can't, it's
amazing.
Who's looking to hide?
Who's looking to hide? So, not that you have to go into it in depth, but I know you were ill. What was it? Did you have a heart attack? What did you have?
I had the arteries, blockages in the arteries.
I wasn't sure how that all went down.
Yeah, one night I had a
stent.
Because,
your energy level, my God, it was so high.
Well, that's just what happened. I filled up with water, really, and I couldn't breathe. And when I went in the hospital, they did all the tests. And when they did the angiogram here, they picked up the blockages. And my brother Joe, 2 weeks before me, had the same identical operation.
It's unbelievable that
happened.
That you both would be so close to that.
Well, yeah. I told my brother that. I says, Mommy made us the same. He's good looking, really. I'm rough looking. I'm the boss. But
well, you're Mr. Sollazzo. That's different in the movie
right.
Godfather,
that's
Mr.
right.
Sollazzo.
That's right.
But we always said Sollazzo. We never said Sollazzo.
The mayor even said the good side of Sollazzo.
The good side of Sollazzo.
He's Mr. Democrat. He's the mayor of Staten Island.
Right.
And, when we talk about Albert, too, Albert has done so much for Staten Island also.
They don't know who you're talking about when you say Albert, because you only
Al Lambert, that's right.
Only family and close friends say Albert, But you always said Albert. I get such a kick out of that.
St. Michael's Church, singing in the choir with my sister.
Absolutely right. Me and Lizzie were kids.
Our
I said Lizzie again.
Well, our family's built St. Michael's Church.
That's right.
Steeple and everything else like that. That's
right.
The harbor. When you came from the harbor, we said that with love,
right?
Because everybody moved from the harbor. And where did they go? To Westerly. They went up a little further.
Right.
They
worked that far away.
Either they worked in P&G,
right,
or they worked in the yards, the shipyards.
Right. Well, my grandmother always told the story about the Sedutos. They were on D Hut Avenue.
That's right.
And my grandmother and Mrs. Seduto, they used to knit together,
That's right.
And he used to make the ice cream in the garage.
In the back. Grandpa made the factory in the back.
There you go.
That's before they had the big factory.
In Port Richmond.
Right.
And she used to say, Mrs. Seduto would tell my grandmother, Annie, what is he doing? He wants to make ice cream. He's got this great job in New York. And my grandmother would say, don't worry, he's a good man.
Well, Pop told me the story that they were partners with the Riccardis. And Riccardi took care of New York. And Seduto's took care of Staten Island.
That's funny. I didn't know that.
They made the ice cream. In other words, it was a very thorough way. Now,
that was the most delicious
Grandpa,
ice cream. Oh, my God.
Grandpa used to go hunting on the bifocal property out in the farms out there.
On Richmond Avenue.
On Richmond Avenue. He used to go with Mr. Seduto, Mr. Piazza.
Right.
Piazza had the same thing. They all had all the boys.
Right.
The bifocal had all the boys. They worked on a farm. And they used to intermingle together.
Right.
My father used to ride the truck when bifocal used to go to pick up the fruit in New York.
Right. Now he was the only Italian on that because the Exarchos, they were Greek. Marcos, they were Greek.
That's right.
He was the only Italian farmer there, except Finelli maybe. I'm not sure how when Finelli was there, but most of those were Greek farmers.
And you had a Scarolavesca, my mother used to say.
That is the funniest thing. I tell that story all the time. Nobody understands what it was. Scarolavesca, which he was the guy who sold the vegetables up and down the street.
Yeah.
Well, the people who are listening, I know teenagers don't watch my show, but I will say that I get people from 50 to 80, And in Mariners Harbor in those days, the people, the characters that we had, that we grew up with, and they were all good, don't get me wrong, it's just astounding. It's like a movie.
Well,
you can make a movie about it.
Talking about your dad and your mother, you know, that's why your father on Community Board 1, you could not fool him on anything, on any kind of piece of property that was coming up on an orchard. He knew everything about that property.
He was land use committee.
Land use committee. He was like God.
He was like, but I got to tell you a funny story. You know, he was only 5'4", my father.
Yeah,
short.
yeah.
And he was going against chairman of land use committee, who was 6'4". I'm not going to tell you who it is. So he give his spiel, and he's telling everybody why they should vote for him to be chairman.
Yeah.
So then it was my father's turn, and my father looked at this guy. This guy's 6'4". I'm 5'4". He got on a chair, and he started telling everybody, "You got to vote for me." Well, the place went crazy. They cracked up, and he won 9-1.
Albert,
because he had a comedy sense.
you were
to
the
him,
best in the world. You took good care of him until he passed away.
Well,
you know, and he moved around a little bit here in the nursing
you never feel
homes.
you did the right thing. But
You went down there. You performed in the nursing home. You made everybody
10,
happy.
12 times.
Yeah.
I should have done it more.
Yeah, he was a good guy. He was a
a good
happy-go-lucky guy, and he was in the right business. He was in the liquor business.
And the banquet business. He was in two businesses that was made for him.
He was a character.
He was
a character. But, you know, our
But
families...
your mom and dad, they
Yeah.
were just beautiful people.
Right.
Your father, when he came to get the Chevrolet, remember he bought the tape measure in? He wanted to measure the car for the garage. The only customer in my life ever brought a tape measure in. He said, "I'm taking the car if it fits," and he measured it. It fit.
My father,
That was a Lumina, Chevy Lumina.
He was the oldest of the brothers, and he loved his photography.
I know. He loved
One time he
photography.
was taking the pictures out in center field, and it was like at my niece's games, the girls' game.
Right.
And the cop went out there to see find out if
Who
he
he
was a
was?
peeper. You know?
That's funny.
He says, "What are you doing out here?"
That's very funny. He had a Chrysler too once, I think.
He had a Chrysler.
Yeah,
He
one
bought a
of those
Chrysler.
big, gigantic, like a piece of
Oh,
property.
my mother used to drive that.
I remember she couldn't see over the wheel.
Put it into the garage. She just would squeeze it into the garage.
I remember that.
I mean, you know, it's we're getting up in age, and I hate to say that like that, but I'm still energetic. I've been out in the community like yourself.
Yep.
You know what I mean? The same name as Mr. Staten Island. Same thing as Albert. You've done so much for Staten Island.
It's never
too.
enough because I always say, what am I going to do next? You know, I'm working on 3 or 4 projects right now, and you know, if God gives me the grace to stay alive, I'll do it till I can't do it anymore.
Our uncles. I was supposed to take over the oil business, and you were supposed to take over the selling the cars.
In my
over there.
mind, I was.
And
But
in your mind and their mind was
things
everything. They're
changed.
going to take what they built up, and that
That's
was it.
And I got it.
That was the
you
end
know.
of it.
I got it all.
You know?
But your property on Forest Avenue, that piece of property was
Well-
the foresight you guys had for that corner.
They bought that. In other words, the house was where the shop was, and they moved the house actually over to build the
I
shop.
did not know that.
Yeah, that's right. They moved it over. Grandpa built the foundation.
And he moved
And
the
I
house
never
to
forget the day when the movers came there. The big truck came there and rolled it over, rolled the house over.
Put it right next to PS22.
Right, put it up on the foundation.
Oh, my God. I
and then
didn't
we
know that.
bricked around it. And then we used that as a...
Well, you had Willie's Jeep there. I think you guys,
Well, you see,
for
Uncle
a very
Mike,
short time, you had
Uncle
Willie.
Uncle Mike didn't care too much for the fuel business, so
Mm.
they wanted to make Uncle Mike. So Uncle Mike was selling used cars
Right.
and Willie's Jeeps.
That's
you know?
amazing, yeah.
And
Well, later on, the Willie's Jeeps, when my uncle
and Renaults.
and Renault's, when my uncle bought the corner of Richmond and Victory, where he
Right.
put the original Staten Island Toyota, that showroom, which is now a car wash,
That's right.
that was Willie's Jeep. They had moved from you
That's
to
right.
there.
That's right.
Newbury and Colburn, because I remember they used to pay him a mortgage, you know, and I was
Yeah.
the manager, so I was make that check out every month. Newbury and Colburn.
That's
was
right.
the name
That's
of the
right.
owners, you know.
And you know, you sold for a while there. You couldn't even get the cars. You got the Toyota cars.
Toyota
You ran
got-
out of cars.
Yeah. In '66, they opened it. I was there as a kid. I was in college studying my books, and then, selling a car, studying my books. And then from around 1970, the Toyota started really taking off. But that was the wrong spot. My uncle knew it. But we started really getting busier and busier. And then he bought the property from Cachese, which is now a lighting store. That's where
they had a gas station on Cary Avenue,
Post
too.
and Clove. Post and Clove.
And
we also were up there where Herbie Tire, where what's his name is there now. I'm having a senior moment. They used to sell Triumph and MG. Parks, Bill Parks had the showroom there. But we were there before Bill Parks. That was Island Service Center number 2. So, I started pumping gas when I was 12 years old.
There you go.
12 years old, pumping gas, changing tires on Post Avenue and Clover Road.
The same thing. We had a gas station.
Yep.
We had 2 stations on the corner of Richmond Avenue and Forest Avenue. One was a Gulf station. The other one was a Shell station.
See, same deal.
That's what they leased that. It was too much to buy, so they paid rent.
Right.
Then they were tired of paying rent, and they bought the property next door.
Right.
See? And then I tell you,
when did you sell that? About 2 years ago? 3 years?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I ended up saying they were all gone.
I know.
They were all gone. Uncle John moved over to another house there, so we had to knock down that house.
Right. That house is down now.
That house was down. And the estate was the
What
kids.
a spot, though. They got to put something great there, I guess, at some point.
The thing is, we set up plans for a center. Mm-hmm. Stores and everything else, like with the easements. We went all through that to make sure everything we cleaned it up so that this way it was done right. Mm-hmm. We spent a lot of money in there. Then when they did the asbestos church, there was asbestos in the plaster. Right. Years ago when they used to mix asbestos, they put it. We had to clean that up. Cost us a fortune to clean that up.
Well, the laws in New York will kill you. You can't afford. It's so hard to be in business in New York. It's destroy you.
Look, we wanted to do it right, and we did it right, and we sold it. Now I see a sign up there. The guy is looking to sell it again.
Sell it again, flip it.
Gonna flip it, because that whole corner there has been revolving around. Mike's Diner, now it's Mike's Diner, the Dakota.
Yeah, Dakota is now Mike's. Yeah.
See? But you see that piece of property where Nick Russo's is, there's an opening there, and our backyard, we always thought a bank would buy it because you could go in from Richmond Avenue and come out on Forest Avenue.
Oh, there's an easement, you mean? Or is this piece of property part of your property?
No, there's no easement.
Oh,
no
it's a
easement.
real
They
piece
couldn't
of
make
property.
it that way. They could do it that way. You know what I mean?
Right, yeah.
But, look, we're sitting here, we're thinking of tape here. We know Staten Island.
Yeah. Like
when Richmond Avenue was 1 lane, 2 lanes.
Well, I don't go back that far. You're a little older, but I do remember it was called. My mother said it was called Washington Avenue. It wasn't Forest Avenue.
That's Forest Avenue.
Oh, yes, you're right. I apologize. I remember when the wide part was from Dakota Diner to Victory in Richmond, and then it was small.
Yeah.
And then they opened. So I do remember
My
that.
My father tells me the story that Richmond Avenue, the original Richmond Avenue, used to come around and hook around where Perkins was and come out the other end. Forest Avenue didn't go straight down.
Right.
Because there was so much. When Mezzacappa went to go and drill over there, there was still the granites. The granite was here. The granites that's in the Bronx is of the same vein.
Island, yeah.
And then there was another quarry on Morningstar Road, right where the Bayonne Bridge is. There was a big quarry there. See, years ago, they used to use that stone, even PS22. If you look at the wall and you look at the church, it's all made out of quarry stone.
Yeah, we call the quarries right in the back.
That's right.
Well, what I could never figure out how Richmond Avenue all of a sudden became Morningstar Road. Then I realized that little street right after you cross Forest
that's Richmond
is still
Avenue.
Richmond Avenue.
That's right.
And it goes to the expressway, stops, and starts on the other end, and it goes to the old Port Richmond. Because it was so confusing. Why, and because we all make a right on Forest and we make another left to get into the old Port Richmond. But those other streets that are on the side.
And down at the bottom there was Leo's.
Yes, there was a car place. Oh, no, the restaurant.
The restaurant.
Yes.
before we all went to Branco's, they don't went to Center Diner. There was Leo's there.
Yes. It was
And
like
all
a
the
car-
motorcycles used to come in
Yes,
there.
the cars would pull up on the rocks.
And I remember when Roosevelt came to Staten Island, one of my uncles, I was on their shoulders, and he came down Trainer Place and made a left on Forest Avenue and went to the piers for a meeting. Roosevelt was in that big car. I
No
remember
kidding.
that.
I didn't
I
know
can
Roosevelt
remember
came
like it
to
was
Staten
yesterday.
Island,
And my
yeah.
uncles had me on their shoulders.
Wow.
See? And it was coming down. But it always amazed me.
He was one of my favorite presidents of all time.
Oh, yeah.
You remember when Eisenhower came? I was a kid in the 52.
Eisenhower was a
He
good
came
man.
with the Queen. He came right through Mariners Harbor on a train, if you remember. They brought him on the train. We all went up on those, they're still there, those trestles, and we watched the train go by. Then we ran across the street. Everybody was waving. Him and Queen Elizabeth were on the back of the train.
See, these presidents that we're talking about had heart.
That's for sure.
You need to have heart.
Yep. Heart
And you
is
need
important.
to feel for people.
Right.
You know,
Gotta have
what's
heart.
going on? We won't get into the politics
Nah,
end of
right.
it now.
Oh,
No,
right.
because the thing is, you if you're going to be the president or the boss of anything, you got to have a little bit of heart. You got to have
agree with
feelings
that.
for people.
Well, that's what I said
You
to
know,
Edwina.
you can't yell at people and tell them to go. Yeah, and you can't tell these other countries to go to hell. It don't work that way. You know.
I'm the type of guy, I don't do politics, but
No,
I
I
do
know
say
that.
that heart is the key.
I almost had you one time. You were going to
almost
run for Congress.
Well,
I almost had you.
well, you
almost
had me on Congress and you had me on the borough
Yeah,
president
we talked
thing.
about it.
We
We
talked
talked about it,
You know, am I sorry? Kinda. Am I sorry? No, I'm not. There's two sides of me. You know, I often thought, what would have been had I gone for it.
Well,
But the truth is,
I'm not an elected official, but
Yeah.
I am an elected official.
yeah. So
I mean,
to
I've
speak,
gone through it all. I worked for Diane Savino. I worked for Nick Laporte when he was the leader. I worked for Betty Connolly.
Yeah.
But I was always in the community. My resume is 3 pages long. Your resume is 3 pages long for what you did in a community.
well,
I mean, we're here in a community television here. We never had this when we were kids. Look at this.
absolutely right.
It's
I
so
said,
beautiful. You
I
can
used to
tell the
pick my
stories.
punks here. Remember the punks that went in the swamp?
That's right.
We used to come up to South Avenue to get the punks.
That's
And
right.
here we were doing a television show. On
Best thing with the strength that I had, I named the street, and you named the street
that
after your
was-
father.
that was great.
Right across the way, Amity Place in
right.
Harbor Road.
Isn't that great?
I named after Lambert
And Sollazzo.
Sollazzo. Right across the street.
At least they'll remember us for a while, or
Oh.
remember our last name.
Oh, thank God our council people, because it goes through the city council.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah.
But
The name, just as we're talking about names, my Lamberti was the original name, but I never. My birth certificate says Lambert, of course.
Yeah.
And my father always was Dom Lambert, but my mother, we all knew that it had to be Lamberti because we're Italian, you know. And Ralph Lamberti used to break my onions all the time. I'd say, Ralph, I show him my license, and he used to laugh. But when my father passed away, that was the only time I ever saw my father's birth certificate because we needed it. So my sister couldn't find it. I forgot. They went online. They got it sent. And my father's name was Domenico Alberto Lamberti.
Oh, look at that.
Totally Italian. And in those days, the Italians were having a tough time getting jobs. So my aunts took the I off their name, dyed their hair blonde, and told people that they were German, and that's how they got jobs.
Yeah.
Because they were
The
a lot of
Italians.
prejudice against the Italians. They
Yeah.
called them grease balls and all these names, and sometimes people don't understand what
Italians
the Italians
came a long way.
what they came a long way. So once they did that, it was very hard going back. So they stayed to that. No, this is our name. This is our name, and they never, But in my heart, I kind of figured it, and my mother kind of knew it. But when my sister and I saw that birth certificate, oh my God, we rolled on the floor.
You see, when they came from Italy, either they were bricklayers
right,
or they were some sort of tradesmen.
Mm-hmm.
And they moved to Brooklyn, and that's how Brooklyn was built up, house after house with the bricklayers.
Right.
The other groups here, the Irish was here before us.
right.
And they worked hard. They had all the city jobs. It was tough to break in.
Right.
To make it. That's why.
That's why there was a clash, and then later on, all the Irish and the Italians married each other.
That's why.
I did more Irish Italian weddings.
Yeah, even the Jewish.
Yeah, everybody.
Greeks, everything. Hey, you gotta have, in this day and age, not then. I mean, like, I brought my wife home. They wanted to know, even though she was Italian, where'd she come from?
Right. Was she Barese? Was
Sicily.
she Sicilian? Was she
Sicilian.
Calabrese?
My father-in-law and my mother-in-law were the most beautiful people that work so hard. You got to take people for what they are.
Right. Well, I can't think of the exact year, but Italy was not united until I'm believing in the 1900s, when Italy actually became a state.
Yeah.
It had provinces, and that's why they were so provincial. Were you Calabrese? Were you Sicilian? Because it took many years before Italy actually united itself to become a state.
See, now that's something. That's something.
That's why there were always people saying, well, are you Napolitani? Because where you came from was almost like a mini country.
That's right.
Because that's how Italy was.
And the Italians liked the French because it was right on the border.
Yeah.
A lot of them would have said, Grandpa used to wear that French hat. And he said, Grandpa, what is that?
The mixture of
well,
that's how New York is. The Jewish people, the Italian people, everybody, you were really a New Yorker.
Yeah.
Our traits
But
blended.
You know something? America, the soldier in World War II, when Germany was trying to dominate everything and be the god of everything, the United States went in there, no matter who they were, black, red, white, they went in there and we lost a lot of boys. They gave up their country, gave up their life for their country. And that's what we should remember when we start getting mad at the neighbor over there, who the neighbor is of somebody else, or getting mad at an Irishman, an Italian.
We started.
It's not right.
Melting pot.
They've come a long way.
Yes.
The blacks have come a long way. They have good jobs now.
But you come to America, you come to grow. You come to America to grow. I got to tell you one thing. I got to interrupt you because we got a minute and 30 seconds.
All right.
When World War II was over, my family, the Ferraras, which is, as you know, my mother's side, a huge family, they had a party that lasted 3 days right down here on Harbor Road. And they invited the entire Mariners Harbor.
Yeah.
And every day was a party. Over 500-600 people came in that yard. And they were music and food. And it was because World War II being over was a big thing. And because we had so many, I had 36 cousins, half of those guys were in the war, and my father and my uncles, so they were all coming back, and everybody was so happy that they didn't get killed.
That's right.
So they were having this massive party. We got to say goodbye.
The word is trust. The word is trust.
Great to have you on. I'm so glad.
I enjoy. You know me. I have an eye to the camera. You know that.
You certainly do. And the fire, you're a great guy with the fire department. You love those guys.
We did a lot.
You did a lot with the fire department. You did a lot with the Democratic Party. And I sincerely
I gave my life to the Democratic Party.
And you gave your life to the firemen and the retired firemen. And
plus, my ship is here. USS Intrepid. I was ship's company. I wear that hat.
That's amazing. Thank you, John, for being on the show.
Did it all. I've done it all.
John Sollazzo. Anyway, I'm going to say goodnight. I want to thank you all for paying attention here to the show. And I always tell everybody, in case you're watching at 3 a.m, go to bed. It's late. Thank you, too.
Got the world on a string, sitting on a rainbow. I got the string around my finger. Lucky me. Can't you see I'm in love? There's a song that I sing, I can make the rain go anytime I move my finger. Lucky me, can't you see I'm in love? Life's a beautiful thing, as long as you hold the string. I'd be a silly so-and-so if I could ever let it go. I've got the world on a string, sitting on a rainbow. Got the string around my finger. What a world, what a life, I am in